welcome to the episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287, also on LinkedIn where I post more content. Not so much on Threads yet, but maybe Blue Sky in the future. Who knows where this is going. You can also find every episode of the podcast at dsmsports.net, where I post more content as well. And of course, follow along, subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Just an awesome show for you guys today. I was so psyched to be able to get this guest on. We had a college football guest on last time. If you missed Babak Hayeri of Reddit CFB, of RCFB, Reddit College Football. Today's guest is someone who plays the sport. He is Chase Griffin. He is a quarterback at UCLA and is truly a trailblazer in the space of NIL brand building. He has done a lot of speaking. He works a lot of brands. He's truly helping student athletes across the country make the most of NIL, make the most of branding. A really sharp, articulate young man who is doing awesome things, and you're going to learn a lot from him and be inspired by him, frankly, as well, as the college athletic space continues to make sense of this new name, image, and likeness NIL world. So listen up. Here is Chase Griffin of UCLA football. Right back with today's guest, and I'm so psyched to speak to him. I've already been talking about how I've heard him speak before. He's always really articulate. He's already doing really big things at such a young age. My guest on the podcast today is Chase Griffin. He is a student athlete, football player with UCLA, and also a ton of other things off the field, which we'll go into today. And welcome to the podcast today, Chase.
Thank you so much, Neil. Excited to be here.
So psyched to speak with you. You are truly just blazing the trail for what student athletes can and are becoming these days, well beyond their playing field, and looking forward to picking your brain about what goes into all that and how you think about it. But before we get into sort of the meat of our discussion, tell us how you got to where you are today. I mean, you're still young, of course, but you're already doing big things. So just give us the background of how you got started and what led you to where you are today.
Perfect. I was born at UCLA, Santa Monica Hospital. I live off Wilshire now, so I'm about 2 miles down the road from where I was born, which is really cool.
Nice.
I grew up outside of Austin, Texas, in Round Rock. And there, my first sport was soccer. Grew up playing the violin and a lot of the good orchestras in Austin. That taught me how to train for something and master the art of learning. And I think that's really applied to every aspect of my life. My father, he's worked in entertainment and marketing and production for a number of years. And my mother's a teacher. And so to sort of mimic qualities that they both have on the educational side, as well as on the professional side, has been a cool experience throughout my collegiate career. And from the beginning, I always had self-belief because I knew they believed in me. That carried all the way through middle school, where I got some media recognition. I was, afforded the opportunity to ball boy for the Elite 11 for a number of years. I trained with George Whitfield, and Coach Dilfer gave me that opportunity to be around, the premier of high school quarterback coaching.
Yeah.
And then going from there with that experience and sort of my belief system, it flourished in high school. And I went to Hutto High School, the hometown of the Hippos, and we had a really good run over, especially my junior and senior year. But I started as a sophomore, and in that town, it was one of those Friday Night Lights environments where the whole town would come out and shut down for the games, and there was a lot of pressure. And I was 15, learning how to deal with that pressure and perform well. And it was something that I think forged me into being able to perform at higher levels, as well as representing something larger than myself. And I was able to do it in a way where I stayed true to myself. In senior year, I had the opportunity to work with some brands just because I was the Gatorade and Ford Player of the Year, as well as winning awards for In-N-Out and Whataburger. And so I did appearances, press conferences, interviews, and that sort of introduced me to the brand world.
Yeah.
And before I even got to UCLA, before NIL was even here, I had done brand appearances. Obviously, I wasn't paid for them. And I had represented something larger than myself, which sort of led me to being ready for NIL, as well as having hours and hours of media training, because I was doing interviews like this and radio appearances every single week before I got to UCLA. Once I got to UCLA, I sort of passed on Harvard to come here. And so I was like, I have to make sure I maximize everything of this university, whether it be on the field or off the field, whether it be in class. So I hit the ground running. And in school, my focus was on public affairs. Got my master's in education, and then now I'm pursuing a master's in legal studies. And throughout all of that, I think it's sort of streamlined a mix of policy and governance, where I want to go and later into life into public service, and then in the interim, learning how I can use sport to best affect the people around me. And as NIL opens up new doors as far as into the Hollywood side or into the unscripted television side, building out a good legal capability in that space, I think will be a useful skill to have as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, we were almost joking that you've probably done more in 4 years than most people do in 10 years at school. So my hat's off to you. But let's back up a little bit to those high school days of when you were getting thrown in the fire, so to speak. Like, first, I want to talk a little about the digital side of stuff, but I just first want to talk about just the mental side of things, about how you were thrust into that Friday Night Lights, like all eyes on you in the town at such a young age. Like, was mental health and awareness of that a part of the conversation? Like, people talk to you about, hey, just because we lose this game or because you throw one interception, it's not the end of the world. Like, how was that for you as a young person, and how people around you kind of acknowledge those pressures?
I think that's been one thing I've gotten better at over the years. I think as you grow older and frankly just get out of the mindset that puberty puts you in, it's a lot easier to see that one thing going wrong isn't the end of the world, or that you can still accomplish your goal even if it's not looking like it is right now. At that age, what really held me together was my family and my belief system.
Yeah.
What's huge for me is my faith. It's been sort of what it is what stabilizes me in every aspect of my life. And having something constant, I think, is important for every person, regardless of what it is, to get through times where it may seem tumultuous. My spring game before my sophomore year, I had 3 picks. This is in high school, and I was new to the town. We had a really good freshman year with the freshman team. We went undefeated, and I was trying to take over for the varsity, and I didn't perform well. And so there was uncertainty there. I was feeling down. There were a lot of expectations on me, like it was the new kid. And I felt like I didn't perform like I knew I could. But I stayed true to myself. I worked hard all summer, didn't lose the dream, and came out first game, threw for 408 yards in my first varsity start. And it was over from there, But times like that where that everyone around you isn't really feeling it, or, maybe there's people close to you that are doubting you. If you can stay true to yourself and have something constant that you rely on, then you realize it's never over. It's the same thing as sort of maintained me through college. Has the on the field, been exactly what I pictured, being the Gatorade Player of the Year, choosing a university? No, but I stay ready every single game. And that's not really because of, what the coaches expect from me or even what my parents expect from me. It's what I expect from myself, because, I carry myself the best that I can. And I can't control anything else.
Really appreciate that response. That's awesome. And then sticking with high school a little bit, I think now we think of just recruiting as a whole thing in and of itself. Like, you have your huddle profile, might be creating like sizzle reels, might be exchanging DMs with recruiting coordinators and coaches and coordinators. Like, what was that process like for you, and how involved was it with your teammates even as well? Of like, I need to make sure I have my graphics, my huddle profile. I need to make sure I have my highlight videos. I need to make sure here's what I need to look for in a school as well. Like, what was that process like for you of going through the recruitment, especially as such a high profile player with an already established quote unquote brand?
I've always thought athletes were built for NIL for 2 reasons. One, we already generate so much revenue and value for the companies and industries that are set up around collegiate sports. And then 2, we're by nature content creators. every single person who's in college right now either produced their own huddle or had a coach or guidance or guardian who created their huddle of content that they were doing on the field. And they had to create their profile and put grades and put, good works in there. Every single person who's gotten to college has been recruited off of a highlight tape, off of some type of reel. And now that you add NIL to the mix, there's a whole nother edge to recruiting where it's where can I, frankly make the most money.
Right.
Which I think is a good thing. I think every single student chooses a college based on how they can prepare them professionally. And the schools that can prepare athletes for NIL the best are going to be the ones that get the best athletes and the most well-rounded athletes. For my recruitment, my story was probably unlike a lot of other folks who, performed the way that I did. I didn't get my offer from UCLA until basically the summer before my senior year. So early that summer. And then after that, that's when other schools of that stature started, really tuning in and showing that interest. But I was committed, so I wasn't hearing any of that. My sophomore year, I threw for over 3,000 yards. We had a pretty good year. We were a strong offense, a very young offense in high school. And I had a little bit of buzz. And then at the quarterback collective camp before my junior year, Mike McDaniel, who's currently head coach of the Miami Dolphins, they just put up 70, saw me and asked, where I had offers to. And by the end of that day, I started that day with 0 offers. By the end of that day, I had 1 because of Mike McDaniel to Yale. And from there, a lot of the other Ivies checked in. And so that's where my recruitment started. And even throughout my junior year, it was, a couple other schools like Northwestern started, North Texas started checking in, and that staff was awesome. But I still hadn't really blown up, and I had thrown for over 4,000 yards my junior year. Going into my senior year that summer, I was about to go to a camp at Harvard, and who knows, I may have committed. But the week before that camp, Coach Kelly sends me a text saying, "Hey, this is Chip Kelly. Can we talk?" And then we talked, and
wow.
He invited me to a camp out there, and I had one of the best camps I ever had. I hit everything, and I told my mother before we left, it was my father and I, before we left, if they offered me, I'm committed. And Coach Kelly offered me, and I committed on spot. And I just remember I was so ecstatic. Going to Harvard would have been amazing. It's going to Harvard.
Yeah.
But it had always been a dream of mine to play Power 5 football, especially at a school with such rich history as far as athletes changing the world. And as an institution, it's about everything that I'm about. And I think to this day, I'm extremely glad that I made that decision because it's where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, I think you made the right call. Even though as a Yale alum, I wish you would have taken that offer your sophomore year and gone become a Bulldog out in New Haven, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, I like New Haven. I didn't have the pizza though. I should have.
You have to go back there at some point then and get some or some Sally's pizza.
Right.
So, obviously you come out of high school, going to a big school like UCLA, being a highly rated quarterback, being a highly rated recruit, and I'm sure a lot of high level D1 athletes feel this way, where it's like, okay, my next path is to spend 3 or 4 years here and then go on to the NFL or go on to the NBA, whatever the sport might be. So are you thinking already, is that where your mindset is? Hey, I'm an athlete. I'm gonna kick ass and I'm gonna sign my pro contract. Or are you already thinking hey, I am more than an athlete. I have all these opportunities off the field as well. I already had some opportunities through these media appearances. It's what was your mindset going in there of all football 24/7 because that's what I'm here for? Or are you starting to think beyond that as well?
Part of what I think got me to the level where I'm at now and whatever I excel in is my ability to prioritize. And even to this day, football is still my number one priority. Even if I'm not on the field every Saturday, I'm preparing every single week like I am. And I have that type of level of care. And the time shows for that. Like I'm still putting in 40, 50 hours a week at the facility. I just, have now blocked off part of my free time and done NIL stuff. That still hasn't changed until I'm done with college. Like as long as I'm playing football, I'm here at UCLA to play quarterback, number one, quarterback in school. And everything else handles itself from there. And I think prioritizing that from 2019 before NIL, it hasn't really changed much to now. I just think other parts of my life that, the 20 hours a week of free time, maybe half of that is NIL now.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, was that something that when NIL came about, it becomes something that you want to learn all about and get all the opportunities out there? Or was it already something that you were thinking about before NIL became a thing, especially with California being, kind of the early mover that led to a lot of legislation? Like, did you see the opportunity of building the Chase Griffin brand before that was even like a monetary thing to do?
I think I saw the value of branding in high school just because and I think to this day, one of my strongest brand followings is in Texas throughout the, Texas high school football circuit. I've been doing interviews like this for a long time, and having that preparation gave me vision on the value of having a good brand and having a good name and being able to conversate with someone and tell your story. I think now I have the opportunity to monetize it. Maybe I'm leaning into it more, but that skill set has always been important to me, and networking has always been important to me. As soon as I got to UCLA, built out my LinkedIn, which has really been a hidden moneymaker for me throughout NIL, just because I've connected with the right people. I built a good following on there, and it adds a dynamic that a lot of other, not just athlete creators, but creators in general don't have. And then furthermore, I wasn't really thinking about NIL when I chose UCLA. Like I had heard about the bills happening, and I think the same way where it sort of shocked the world how quickly it came to fruition will be mimicked in how quickly revenue share comes to fruition. But at the same time, I wasn't thinking about doing the right things for NIL. I was thinking about doing the right thing so that choosing UCLA over Harvard didn't look like a crazy move,
And I guess what's that process like for you figuring out who is like? I think we take for granted some of the stuff, and some athletes are better than others. Of this is who the Chase Griffin brand is. This is who I want to represent. These are the platforms I want to be on. This is the kind of content I want to put out there. This is the kind of time I need to put into content. Or do I need to get some help from friends or other creators? Like, how do you go about thinking about actually executing and putting some strategy behind it as well?
I think as far as the large scale is realizing where you're at and maximizing it. Going back to why I chose UCLA, the history here as far as Jackie Robinson, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Arthur Ashe, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Ann Myers Drysdale, like athletes have changed the world here as much or more than anywhere else. And that's not really a school thing, that's an industry thing. Like globally, it's hard to find a cohort of people who came through the same program that have affected the world the way that UCLA athletes have done. And in recognizing that, I think I felt there was an onus upon myself and all other UCLA athletes to carry that out to this day, just because I feel like without that, UCLA isn't the same entity and brand that it is today. As far as the day-to-day, for me, is treating people well and then being prepared. Going into every single content shoot that I have, I create a shot list. And I've gotten better at that over time, but it cuts down production time and increases the quality of your productions. And then once you involve editors, then they can see your vision on paper and they know exactly how to streamline that process. So I think finding ways where you build out your technical skill as well as having a passion that's based on appreciating the opportunities that you have has been great for me, because even though it is work, it never feels tedious.
Yeah. I think as NIL became bigger and bigger, there's almost this and you can speak to better than I can, of course. Having being around all these student athletes as well is almost like a pressure. Like, hey, there's always opportunities now to earn money. You better get out there and do your thing. Because if you're not, everyone's gonna look at you like, why aren't you not taking advantage and getting that bag while you can? Especially if you're not going to have a pro career off the field as well. Like, do you see that? Is there that kind of monkey on the back of other student athletes who are like, hey, I need to make sure I get my content skills down. I haven't posted on Instagram in a while. I better get on there. Like, is that something that's just part of the student athlete experience now amongst yourselves talking about, we have to create content. How do you get the deals that you get? Who do you talk to? Like, is there this whole ecosystem that everyone is kind of feeling like they need to be a part of?
I think a lot of athletes, they see maybe teammates of theirs or people at other schools who play the same position or same sport succeeding. And the thing is, they have no idea how it happens. Or they think there's some trick to it. And bottom line, the majority of college athletes haven't done any cash deals. Like, have earned $0 through name, image, and likeness. Not all this money is being thrown around to every single athlete at every single campus. There's athletes at Power 5 football, basketball, and women's basketball teams who haven't done any cash deals. And that's a mix of there hasn't been a whole lot of education or experience in the space for athletes to know exactly how to create daily content, or athletes don't have the passion or aren't, as interested in it maybe as some of their teammates. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think not everybody has to participate in NIL, and the ones that do, it's completely up to them how much time and effort that they put into it. But it is very much get in what you get out, as far as the time commitment. And the thing is, it's less reliant on sport than people realize. There are folks who are extremely good content creators who are in gymnastics or who are in soccer or in rowing that are getting deals because they know how to create a follower base and create content that is engagement worthy, and brands recognize that.
So is there almost that, like, what separates the everyday creator, just your normal undergrad at UCLA who's part of a couple clubs, maybe goes to some frat parties, versus someone that is, on the tennis team or on the softball team, whether they are, All-American or All Pac-12 or not? Like, is there just an inherent benefit because of a built-in fan base, because of built-in alumni, where an athlete does have a little bit of an opportunity to take advantage of?
I don't think so. I think that the athletes who are creating that, they can rely on their ability to, take pictures in a uniform, have game stats, that type of thing. But at the end of the day, they're working for that. Like, that is part of their appeal as a person. The same way that there's someone who has a talent because they've been working since they were 10 years old on it. Maybe they're an expert artist or good at drawing or a painter or something of that sort, and have built out a following of that. Athletes have put in just as many hours on the athletic side. And so I think diminishing or saying that what athletes have built in is not built in. Like, it had to be built by somebody. It was built by the work of the athlete. Every single athlete out of college had people behind them guiding them. They themselves were intrinsically motivated to get to where they're at. Now, being able to capitalize on that is the right that this nation should provide to everyone, which is what the Supreme Court said.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is just the aspirational and inspirational storytelling part of it, where all you guys that have played collegiate sports had a dream as a middle schooler, as a high schooler, and worked your ass off to get to where you are. And there's something that's very, not just relatable necessarily, but inspirational of that, and to be able to follow that story throughout social is certainly part of it. And I think being alongside a lot of student athletes when I was in college myself, we often talked about, like, yeah, obviously NIL was not a thing then. I'm much older than you, but it was hey, you're an opportunity to take advantage of these 4 years. You may not be playing sports after you graduate, but an opportunity to go in and meet people, shake hands, meet alumni, and that the opportunity to play the sport is giving you opportunity well beyond the field as well beyond the games also. So is that part of the mindset, especially for other student athletes at UCLA, yourself included, among others who aren't eyeing a professional contract or that opportunity after graduation, where there are always other ways to take advantage of the opportunity you're in, that you put yourself in by that hard work beyond, yes, NIL is part of it, a potential pro career is part of it, but there's all these other doors that if you walk into them, like you have with your LinkedIn and networking and all these events and appearances as well, there's an opportunity to still take advantage of that as well, and to hopefully teach those others about how to do so.
I think there's a lot of different views on education, but I think the most important thing a college can do is prepare you for professional life, and to do it in a way that's sustainable and guides you to the success that you strive to have. Whether that be, stability, financial success, wealth goals, all of that. NIL and being able to partake in literal business and business of self and entrepreneurship is one of the most important factors and characteristics you can have in forecasting professional success. Those who are starting their own businesses in college or learning through internships or work experience are, getting arguably the best part of college during those college years, and able to network. And athletes were barred from that. And there's no surprise that athletes who were getting these maximum contracts in the professional world were going broke because they were barred from participating in any type of business. And then you give them the lottery. So now that NIL is here, I think it adds to the cumulative nature of student athletes' education while they're still in school. And the ones who tap into it are going to get the best experiential knowledge, just like those who really lean into the readings in their class would. And the ones who don't really care about it or focus on other aspects, that's fine. They're just missing out on that aspect of college.
Seriously, I mean, I know even myself, I got a lot of my best job skills outside the classroom, and there's opportunities still in the classroom as well, but being able to learn how to work with the athletic department, learn how to create content, learn how to, manage time and all that, manage teams and interviews. So like for you guys, learning in this NIL space, which no one's really, we're kind of making up as we go to some degree, and regulations are a little bit blurry at times. What are those resources for you guys? What's lacking? What is working well? Who did you go to early on to kind of get that information about? Here's what the contract language means. I know you mentioned you're, of course, getting legal studies master's right now, but before that, even here's what a business deal should look like. Here's what analytics I should be looking at and sharing. Here's what a deck looks like. Like, is the education happening in the classroom? Is that happening within individual sports programs? And what kind of resources do you have early on, and what kind of resources do you wish exist now?
I think for others it depends on the school. Some schools are pretty laissez-faire. They just ask you to disclose to compliance, and you just do your thing. Other schools, they have more extensive programs set up where they can match you with deals or get you connected with folks who are experts in the space. I know at UCLA, as far as the content side, there's not too much support, but on the legal side, there's some good support. So the Griffin Institute will come in and send in the grad students in that program to not really advise, but help contract reads. That way the athletes understand what they're signing on to or not signing on to. As far as other schools or even collectives, I know some help with the content side. For me, I'm blessed to have a father who's worked in the space. And so a lot of it was trial and error early on. And I was doing well enough to get the next deal. And so, it's a cyclical motion where you sort of look back at the content of a deal. And if you go back to my earlier content, I was well spoken on camera. It looked nice, but they weren't true productions like they are now. And I think that's good. I think growth is important in any type of new industry, and the folks who've been innovators in this space have reaped the benefit. And I think the companies that have partnered with them have done so as well.
Yeah. And you have done a good job of representing yourself and continue to do so. So how has that become an even bigger part of the Chase Griffin pitch and the Chase Griffin brand? Because I mean, to your point, like You do prepare like hell every week and every practice, every meeting. But you're not starting on Saturdays as much as you were like back in 2020, for example.
Right.
So it does that change the pitch? Why are like what's your pitch to brands? Why are brands still wanting to work with you? Why am I talking to you today? Because I admire you, even though you're not QB1 every day.
I think not letting the value that I add or my ability to perform be determined by someone else's depth chart.
Yeah.
I think if if you let your life be governed that way, there's going to be a lot of opportunities you miss out because there's always somebody else that thinks there's somebody better for your position. And that's not really a football thing. That's not really a sports thing. It's more of a life thing. There's always going to be somebody that says, well, that person can do it better. It's like, well, they not me. They can't add the value that I add. And it's not really a knock on that person. And it's not a knock on the person who's making that decision. It's just staying true to yourself and realizing the worth that you have. And every single day, with every opportunity that God blesses me with, I'm going to maximize it as if I'm doing it for God. And because I know that there's a value that comes out of the value that I create for others. I may not receive it now. Sometimes with NIL, I do receive it now, and it's nice. But, I know that I'm still in the process of life where I'm sowing seeds. And every single day, I just try to win the day. And by staying true to myself, I'm the only person that I'm truly responsible for in this life. And I'm completely responsible for myself. So the output that I have, regardless of what it's in, I take ownership over that. And because of that, I don't look at any opportunity as light. If I have that opportunity, I'm taking it, completely serious, taking it full advantage of that opportunity because I recognize how scarce they are.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's at some point, and you can correct me or tell me otherwise too, that you've transcended Chase Griffin, the football player. That might have been what you were when you come out of high school and had all those accolades, and you still are a football player and a highly accoladed one at that point. But like there's more to you. You are Chase Griffin, is someone that is blazing trails in the athlete space. You're someone who is an inspiration and coaching other athletes in this NIL space. So, like, was there a point in your career throughout the last few years where you realize, hey, I am more than a football player, and that's how my brand's going to evolve along with that?
I don't think I've ever looked at myself just as an athlete. And sports is amazing. Sports is great. The sports are great. But diminishing yourself down to one title is, I think, it devalues yourself. Yeah. Every single person on earth is worth so much more than their profession, just one title of them. For me, just being created by who I'm created by, I think there's innate value. And I think there's innate value in every single person on earth. And I treat everyone that way. To look at myself as just an athlete, I think is almost an insult. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, I am an athlete, and I do strive every single day and focus a lot of time on my athletics. But if I'm only focused on that, then this one life that I live on earth, I'm not maximizing it. And that just doesn't sit right with myself.
Oh man, I love that's inspirational. I love that shit. A few minutes, Griffin, who is an athlete, but much more than an athlete at UCLA, and we'll get to that little shareable stat in just a minute here. But I want to talk about kind of like what this NIL space is doing to just the overall expectations of student athletes, of going back even down to kids who are in middle school now, who are working with maybe private QB coaches, and like, are we getting to the point where that is becoming too much, or like where there's an 8th grader who is already thinking about where he's going to go to school because this is where he's going to get the most money, and already thinking about an NFL career? Like, do we need to, and even building a brand, like thinking about their Instagram profile and the brand they're building in 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade and 9th grade? What's that doing to the up and coming athletes? And is it overall a good thing? Are some of these headlines almost a little bit deceptive, where like not every athlete's getting 7-figure deals? Like, how do you see that affecting the low, not the lower end, but the up and coming athletes who are going to be playing, Division I sports in a year, 5 years, 10 years from now?
I think it's a whole new world, but I think we're trending towards revenue share. So all of this practice at creating value and looking for value will finally be, accessible to the fullest extent for athletes. Now we can only get paid off the content side. It's not really pay for play. We're not getting paid because of the value that we create for the schools, TV deals, media rights, etc. I think athletes being prepared for that is important. And I think at the same time, preparing athletes for the mental side of all of that is important as well. And managing expectations and finding things that keep you stable when there's actual money around you that depends on your performance. I grew up as one of those athletes, and my pops would say I was the first one who did it. I had the Chase QB11 username back before having your name and then your position and number was cool, and that really helped me stay connected with a lot of folks that I met through the Elite 11 process and gave me good practice at building out a clean image early on. In addition, I grew up with trainers. So Jeff Blake, one of the best deep ball throwers of all time, taught me how to throw. And George Whitfield, became a huge mentor for me on the football side throughout my middle school and high school and early collegiate career. Having all of that was important because it takes a village, especially for athletes who don't come out 6'6", 250 running 4.40. And every single person who's out of college now had someone in their life who was pushing them in all aspects and areas. And I think now that NIL is here, the folks who understand the importance of content creation and building a brand that appeals and that's attractive to brands are going to reap the rewards of that. And through revenue share, I think all of that will be accelerated.
Totally. I think that's the big piece. And I know you brought it up here, is that even if you don't become the starting quarterback for Alabama or whatever, that just even going through the journey and being getting to the point where you are a student athlete, you still have it's going to be a piece of the pie for you, even if you're not getting the Bryce Young deal, wherever he was getting or beaten before that. One more thing here before you share with Chase. I can seriously pick your brain all day. I feel like the time's just flown by. I don't know where the time's going. There's so many more things I want to talk to you about, but let's talk briefly about just the nitty gritty of how things come together. Like when it comes to a brand deal, are brands sliding into your DMs? Do you go through do you have a manager now? Do you have an agent that helps arrange these deals? Are there certain brands that you will straight up say no to? Are certain ones that you're like, wish you could work with? Like what goes into the actual execution of putting this all into action?
So I'm still self-repped and self-managed. I consult at a management firm called Range Media on the Range Sports team. And there it's awesome. But most of my deals still come directly either to my inbox, whether it be DM, most commonly LinkedIn or my mail. And through email, either myself or my father will flag an interesting deal, and then I'll review it. If I like it, pass along to my pops, he'll sort of review it. And then we say, yeah, it's a yes or no. And it's really based off three things. It's my personal values. I consider myself a believer, a winner, and a provider, and I look for other brands that mimic those values. And then two is the economic value. Is the price and deliverables that they're asking for on par with my market price.
Yeah.
And then three is community value, where I find ways to parlay what the brand is about and their expertise and reach, as well as the money that's coming in because of the deal, and then finding ways to create community value. Right now, that's being expedited a lot quicker just because I have my foundation, the Chase Griffin Foundation, that in a deal that I did with Groundswell. And then once I get the green light on doing a deal, I reply back, say, let's set a meeting. Normally it's an intro call. It's about 20, 30 minutes where we flesh out the dynamic of the actual deal. If it's a smaller deal, then we'll just do it through email, just get the deliverables. And then from there, go into the early pre-production process. So I get the creative, or I create the creative and get it approved by the brand. And then I create the shot list for that. Then I make sure that the venue's okay if we need a venue. If not, then I contact my videographer, send them the shot list, and pencil in a day and schedule out 2 or 3 hours to shoot. From there, after the shoot, uh, get all the content, and then get the edit done by my videographer. And then in the meantime, I'm sort of checking in with the brand, making sure everything's good, then sending over the initial edit to the brand. If the brand likes it and it gets approved by legal. Legal is probably the biggest hurdle to get past, especially with larger brands. Then we're good to go. If not, send it back to the videographer. We sort of do a round two, and then so on. Normally it doesn't go past 3 or 4 rounds, and then we get the finished product, and then post time comes, and then from there, brands always want to know the metrics of how post performed.
Man, just love going through that process, and I'm just sitting here like shaking my head and grinning, being like, "Damn, he really is part of every part of the process." Like, you're project managing, you're going through pitches, you're going through creative, you're going through legal, you're going through content. Just really cool stuff, man, to hear. And I just love having been able to share that with the audience today.
No, absolutely. I appreciate it. And that's the most valuable part. Like, I have earned a good amount of money that I'm extremely grateful for. Have earned the ability to give money away. But at the same time, it's the experience that I'm most excited about, because I'm creating, I think, a workable template for life that, as long as I stay true to myself, I'll be able to, continue growing as far as wealth creation.
Hell yeah. I'm looking forward to continuing to see it. With Chase, we're going to have some more fun with you in our first and 10 segment. So stick around for that. The first episode of Shareable Stat coming up right now. Just great stuff. Really enjoy being able to talk to Chase Griffin, pick his brain, hear about his experiences. Really cool insight into kind of the operations too of executing an NIL deal and how he works it. Just really, really cool being able to talk to Chase. And we're going to have some more fun with him and learn some more and hear some more stories with our quick hitting questions. So stick around for that. But first, this episode is Shareable Stat. And for this episode of Shareable Stat, I grabbed something that is pretty relevant to this conversation today and has to do with NIL. And that is that in the entire year 2022, 17% of Division I Division I student athletes, had at least one NIL deal, participated in NIL activities with a marketing or endorsement deal. 17%. That really puts into perspective that while it gets a lot of headlines and there's definitely a lot of money being made and being spent in the NIL space, whether through collectives or through brands or whatnot, just 17%, 17 out of every 100 student athletes have actually been able to participate in NIL activities at the D1 level. And it just goes to show that it's not for everyone. Not everyone has the same opportunity. And as much as we talk about it all, the big deals are really happening with a very, very select few. It doesn't mean that the opportunities are out there for everybody. As Chase talked about in his interview, the opportunity is there to build your brand, whether you are a superstar on the field and ready and going to become a next big professional star, or you are a normal student almost. And as he talked about, normal students are able to obviously monetize their NIL and be creators, and be social media influencers just as much as an athlete can. And athletes have the same opportunity, and many, like Chase, like others, are taking the opportunity to really get good at creating content, at being very intentional about building a brand. As Chase talked about, we'll talk about as well in the next segment. LinkedIn is an opportunity for some student athletes, and Chase is taking advantage of it. Just really interesting stuff. Again, that shareable stat, just 17% in 2022. We'll see how it changes in 2023 as we near the end of the year here, depending on when you're listening to this. We'll see how much that number goes up. But no matter what, it's still a minority of Division I athletes are actually participating in NIL activities. And that's 17% in 2022. All right, that's a shareable stat, but more importantly, stick around to hear more from Chase Griffin of UCLA. Right back in this episode's Shareable Stat, and I'm joined once again by Chase Griffin, UCLA student athlete, and all things off the field as well, entrepreneur, NIL athlete. But Chase, you kicked ass interview, learned so much. I felt freaking inspired, to be honest. Are you now ready for a little first and 10?
Let's do it.
All right, number 1, your favorite class you've taken at UCLA so far, and the toughest class that you've taken at UCLA.
Probably one of the first classes I ever took here with Professor Redmond. It was a musicology class called Music and Politics, and we talked about the intersection. Eventually I do want to get into public service, and music is arguably my favorite thing on earth.
Mhm.
So matching those two was extremely invaluable for me. Plus, she was a great professor. Hardest class, probably macro econ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a good grade in there, but that was tough.
As an econ major myself, I can look back on those days and definitely spend some time with tutors and office hours to get through those problem sets. Don't miss them.
Yeah.
Number two for Chase, tell me the digital social platform where you found the most value, the one where you recommend student athletes focus, it might be the same. And then third, the one you wish you had more time to be active on.
Well, I find value on all of them. I can't commit to one, but I will say that I did a program with LinkedIn, the accelerator program, the creator accelerator program, and built a really good network with a lot of the other folks in my cohort, and B, having to do 40 posts in 10 weeks taught me really how to content create and how to template and the importance of programming. And I think I'm a better creator today than I was 2 years ago because of that program.
Awesome.
And then I would encourage every single young person to get on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Are student athletes on LinkedIn now? Is it becoming a bigger thing?
I think more and more. I think some athletes have sort of known it and maybe weren't giving along the sauce, but I think the cat's out the bag now.
Yeah, you can't be sleeping on that. It's huge, and it's becoming even bigger now as Twitter's kind of gone into remission a little bit, where people are starting
Right.
to.
Right.
All right, number three. We talked about this a little bit, I guess. What ultimately made UCLA the choice? When you look back on it, just the combination of opportunities and academics. What did they have that Harvard didn't have, and what other schools were you close on, if any?
I think it was the combination of sports and academics, and then the history and frankly Black history here. I think there's few institutions in America that have had the amount of world changers year after year, era after era that UCLA has. I mean, people always talk about back in the day, which is true, but even right now, the largest equity play in sports has been NIL, and that's started because of Ed O'Bannon.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, if you don't realize too, I think Jackie Robinson, like he might have lettered in like 4 sports at UCLA. He was insane.
Oh yeah, played everything. And his teammate in football was Kenny Washington, who reintegrated the NFL.
And of course, you got Diddy Reese as well for those great.
Yeah, we do. We do got Diddy Reese. Fox Theater, that's my spot though.
Hell yeah. Number 4. This is an interesting one for you, Chase. Tell me the most important tip you give to someone to manage everything. You talked about prioritizing. You have so much going on between football and class and all these extracurriculars and brand deals. So what's your number one tip to keep track of, manage all that without burning out?
I mean, as far as managing it, the more you focus and want to be good at something, you got to spend more time on it. And that means taking time away from other things. So there's really only 3 things in life that I focus on. It's the football, school, NIL. Of course, there's an overarching thing like family, friends, and my faith, but all that more just empowers me in those 3 things. And then outside of that, when you're on, you're on. When you're off, like completely off. So finding something that's completely different from those. Like sometimes I'll go home and the game will be on. I'm like, I've been spending time on football all day. I can't watch the game. Like I got to make sure when I wake up in the morning, I'm feeling refreshed. I feel like I got away from it enough. And so for me, music has been huge. And it's something that's still productive because I'm able to create songs and create productions. But music, video games, and TV and movies. So whenever I'm not active or doing something in the NIL school or sports space, then I'm doing something that's completely different and just rest my mind.
Love that. Is there do you ultimately have to be willing to sacrifice some of the quote unquote stereotypical college student experience where you're going out and getting wasted on Saturday night, then doing brunch on Sunday and sleep until 1 o'clock? Like, is that just something you have to say, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this every weekend, like every, the stereotypical college student is?
Right. Yeah. I mean, with me, like I'm sort of a square anyway. Like I don't partake, but I think in everything there's balance. And I understand even with the music, like some nights I really do want to stay at the studio all night and make music. But if I got practice in the morning, like that's not happening.
Right.
So being able to, if you say you're committed to something, really being committed.
How about this next up for you, Chase? And this is one I want to get into a little bit more in the interview because I think there's a lot of pro athletes that can learn from what college athletes are doing now in terms of brand building and maximizing their name, image, and likeness. So tell me the current pro athlete you most admire and why, for whatever reason.
Is this all time or just now? Current?
Either one. We relatively recent, I guess, in your lifetime, at least.
Okay.
Not active.
Okay, because as far as athletes go, I think the only one that I really look at and say, not the only, but one of the only ones is Muhammad Ali, where I really revere how steadfast he was to his values and his ability to perform in his sport and ability to, frankly, be a performer outside of his sport. And his ability to voice his opinion in a way that was very pro-athlete, pro-Black, and, pro-love. As far as current, I respect Russell Wilson a lot. And part of that is because I really, I enjoy watching him as a football player, and I think there's parts of my game that are similar, and my stature that are similar. But I respect the way that he continually carries his faith, and you sort of see it where even when they're struggling, or even if he has a game where he doesn't play well, he keeps a grateful heart and a grateful mind. Now, it's a lot easier to do that when you're on a $200 million contract. I understand that. But I think whether he was making $200 million or $0, he would still have the same faith and same conviction. And I really respect that in anyone.
I could totally appreciate that. I mean, I picture what Muhammad Ali would be like on social media during his prime. That would have been awesome.
Right.
And on the Russell side, like people can mock him, make fun of him, call him cheesy, whatever, but he just exudes positive energy. He's not going to bring you down. He's not going to go that lower level, and I think that's something to really respect as well.
Right. Absolutely.
Next one up for you, Chase. Tell me, how do you keep up with this industry? I mean, the NIL industry in particular is changing constantly. Sports business is changing constantly. Social media is ever evolving. What do you do to kind of keep up? Are there podcasts, newsletters, certain people on social you follow? What's your strategy for staying up with things?
Finding pockets of my off time to read. And then my pops is also constantly following it, so he's able to forward me articles or forward me updates on what's happening. And it's extremely important to me, especially right now, because I'm in the process of building out a newsletter that will, from the athlete perspective, capture the experience of what it means to be a college athlete.
That is awesome. You want to shout out? When are you hoping to launch a newsletter?
Hopefully next month.
Hell yeah. So check and look out for it. Well, I can't wait to subscribe myself. That's awesome. Number 7, this will be a little bit of a fun one for you. Tell me the favorite place you traveled in the country, in the world, wherever, and also the place that you haven't been yet, but you want to go. Top of your bucket list.
Well, favorite place I've been so far is Tokyo, Japan. I went there earlier this year. It was pretty amazing. Honestly, I'll go back every year if I have the time. As far as a place I haven't been, I don't know. I've been to Europe once, but I've never been to like England or even Paris. So I think going to England would be great just because I have some business with some folks out there.
Oh yeah. I have a pretty good confidence you'll make it out there at some point in the relative future.
Yeah, I have to make it a business trip. That way it doesn't feel unproductive.
Number 8 for you, Chase. Quick one here, but it's our food question. Gotta ask a food question. Tell me the best meal to get in Texas and where to get it. Very tough question. And then the best meal that you've had in LA or Westwood and where to get it.
In Texas, Salt Lick. It's the best barbecue spot on earth. It's probably around 2 miles away from my house. They cook everything in a pit. They cook the sausage at the top. So it all tastes the same. And it's all really good. There's also another spot out there called Paco's Tacos, where it is a Mexican spot, best bowl of rice and beans, best tacos in the world. Out here in LA, I really like breakfast burritos. So I've tried almost all of them here. All the top ones when TikTokers are going through and waking late. If y'all need an ambassador, just let me know because it would probably save me a lot of money.
There we go. There's a content play there for sure. Like you review breakfast burritos. That could be a next content piece for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, number 9 for you, Chase. Now that our mouths are watering, tell me the most impressive athlete, just pure athletic ability that you've seen compete in person, whether at UCLA or before that. Just wow, this person is a ridiculous athlete.
Probably Jalen Waddle. He was on my 7-on-7 team in high school with Fast Houston. Yeah, he's probably the fastest athlete I've ever seen in person.
Oh, I can't even imagine seeing him.
Yeah, I mean, he was that fast at 17. So
still doing things now, big things now, of course, with the NFL.
Absolutely.
Jace, tell me the UCLA student athlete whose name we should know because they're destined for big things. Who's someone there at UCLA in sports outside of yourself? Who we should recognize because they're destined for big things, whether it's in sports or not.
I would shout out Abby Forbes. She was at UCLA. Now she's at North Carolina, tennis player, but she's always done a really good job of building her brand. And in all my interactions with her, she's always seemed really solid and focused on what she wanted to accomplish throughout life.
Love that. Awesome. We'll definitely link up and shout her out.
Yeah.
All right, Chase, kicked ass in your first and 10. Now your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're following.
As far as my socials?
First you get to shout out somebody else who we should follow.
Okay. Yeah. Shout out Raekwon Smith. He was on my show that I hosted for JP Morgan. He's in track. I think he refers to himself as the king of NIL. I'll be sure, Neil, to send you his followings, but definitely follow along with Raekwon Smith. He's getting into the consulting side now.
That'd be awesome. Hell yeah. And how about you, Chase? Where can we find you? And also just like tell us all the stuff that you've done. I mean, JP Morgan podcast, you just shout out there like on the side tangentially. So tell me where to find you and also just where to find places that you've been and stuff you're doing.
Definitely check out the Zone In podcast. It was hosted by myself and Kayvon Thibodeau from the New York Giants, and we focused on a lot of what we talked about today as far as how to maximize NIL, your college career, and more importantly, after that, how to practice good spending habits to create generational wealth. As far as my socials, I'm Chase QB11 on everything, and then on LinkedIn, just my name, Chase Griffin.
Hell yeah. The great branding. Check him out. He is just a beacon for the space where it's going. Is helping to clear the trail for others and inspire others. And Chase, cannot thank you enough for coming on today and sharing us with some of your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you for having me, Neil. We got the first down.
Hell yeah. Love being able to talk to Chase Griffin of UCLA. Just awesome stuff. Really cool to be able to hear his perspective as someone who's right in the trenches, doing his best to brand build, doing his best to inspire and to teach others as well along the way. And cannot thank Chase for giving us some of his time today, because as you heard, he is certainly a very busy man as a student, as a brand builder, as a creator. Just so much stuff going on with Chase, and I really appreciate him giving him some time on the podcast today. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horwitz. Hit me up on the website, dsmsports.net, where you can find every episode and more content. Twitter and at NJH287, LinkedIn as well, where you can find more content I post. And of course, follow along, subscribe on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Until next time, this is Neil Horwitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.